49ers finally have a home game this week. Well, kind of. They're wearing their home uniforms in Levi's South. At the very least, we'll call it a home game. But they do have a division game coming up. And I think the thought process was, and we'll talk to Ryan about it, but I think the thought process was the Rams were left for dead. They were rebuilding. Maybe they were in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. But after week one, maybe not. Maybe that is not the case. So we are definitely going to talk about this game a ton, break it down every which way from a 49er fan to somebody who covers the Rams, and we're going to do it all next. All right. Welcome back to Last Second Sports, where we are giving you our take down to the last second. And it is behind enemy lines night, which means I've got a Rams content creator on, really an LA football content creator. And that is the name of the channel over there, LA Football Network, LAFB. I got my guy Ryan, who I've done multiple shows with now. I think we got some good rapport. Ryan, how you doing, my man?
What's up, brother? I am good. Both teams going 1-0 into this game, which what more could we ask for? So, but yeah, man, life is good. You know, I just watched that Netflix doc Swamp Kings, and the whole time I'm like, man, my guy JNay's made it big time up on the big screen, all 4 episodes. So you're looking good out there on the Netflix doc.
Hey, you know what? I do what I can do. It's a busy life that I live. It's a very busy life that I live. Nice,
yeah,
nice. Yeah. By the way, let's hold on a second. See, I see what you tried to do there, Ryan. You tried to act like you didn't start this whole Tim Tebow thing, and you absolutely did. People have called me Tebow for the last 18 months because of you. And I was at the Steeler game, and it's funny. I was turned to the side. I was talking to my friend, and the lady taps me on the shoulder. She goes, "Anybody ever tell you that you have a Tim Tebow profile?" And I go, "Yeah, I've heard. Thanks. Appreciate that." So that's all you. I almost forgot. I almost let you off the hook.
You need to just, is he still even on the SEC network anymore or whatever he's doing? You need to just show up one day and see if they just let you go. Like, just walk in, like, "What's up, Tim?" And you can just walk on in, and all of a sudden you're on set. You just got to give it a chance one time.
Might as well go for it. Well, let's talk about those Rams that are on your cup and on your shirt. You're all decked out. The Rams had a big win on Sunday, and we were talking a little bit backstage, but I'll tell you what my expectations were for the Rams, and then you can tell me what your expectations were going into the season. I thought the Rams were max a 6-win team. Like, that's the way I saw it, especially when Cooper Kupp went down. I'm looking at Stafford. He was banged up last year. I really didn't know if he was ever going to return, and if he did, would he return to form? No idea. Cooper Kupp's not there. They trade Ramsey for peanuts. The whole team seems to be falling apart, and yet the Rams get a big division win against Seattle, and Seattle is a team that was a popular pick this year. They had already made the playoffs last year when nobody expected them to. They had improved on paper a ton, and they got, quite frankly, the score may not say it, but they got whooped by the Rams. That game was dominant, in my opinion. So that was a bit of a surprise for me. What were your thoughts going into the season about the Rams, and were you a little surprised by the outcome of that game?
Yeah, so to answer your first question, it's so funny. The Rams, all Rams fans, Rams Twitter was like very polar opposites. You had like half that were like way too optimistic, thinking this was like a Super Bowl contender. And you had half that were like, this is a 1-win team that's going to be absolutely horrendous. Like everything in life, as we all know, it's usually somewhere in the middle. So I was very much more on the lines of, I thought their floor was 6 wins. I thought their ceiling was 9 wins. I thought they could push the envelope, get to that 9-win threshold, just because of the quarterback play in the NFC is, as we all know, not great, or at least in the offseason. We'll see how it turns out as the season goes on. But they thought they could steal some games just because I knew, I shouldn't say no, but I knew from watching and talking to people in the organization that Stafford was back to his normal self, and his arm was stronger than ever. And, the McVay was in better spirits than he's ever been. Donald was super happy to be back. Cup, before he got injured, was looking great. And then there was just kind of this like F it attitude among all these young rookies, because they don't know any better. Like, they're just going to go out there and ball, and there's no like previous, thought process to what they had. So I was like, this is a team I think is going to surprise people. They're going to, like I said, a 9-win kind of ceiling, which, in the NFC, I think can sneak in the playoffs. And once you're in the dance, you never really know. But all that being said, I didn't think they would go out and slobber knock the Seahawks like they did, especially in the second half, giving up 3 yards in the second half. I mean, Geno Smith threw for 120 yards and they had 180 yards total. They had less than 90 yards of rushing, and they have Kenneth Walker. They drafted Zach Charbonnet, who they only gave the ball to 2 times, which, I'm cover UCLA too, which that's just shocking to me that they didn't utilize him more. But so the offense, I thought, I wasn't super surprised. I thought they definitely moved the ball better than I expected without Cooper Kupp and guys like Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, and I'm sure we'll get into it. I thought really impressed. But the defense was absolutely what shocked everyone. I mean, holding DK Metcalf to 3 catches, shutting down Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, hats off to obviously Sean McVay, but even more so Raheem Morris, who I think had that young defense really falling out. So to answer your question, I had good expectations for the year, but I was definitely overly surprised with a 30-13 win up in Seattle.
Yeah, it's I was absolutely shocked. And I'm going to go back to this comment because, you started the whole Tim Tebow thing. And maybe over here we can start the Trent Dilfer game for you. Yes. So we're gonna push that agenda. If I'm Tim Tebow, maybe you can be Trent Dilfer. At least we're 2 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I've never heard that one. I've always preferred Edward Norton, but I've never heard Dilfer. But now I see it. Now that you say it, like, dang
it. Who's on my shirt? It is a Mid-Journey art. It's the Golden Gate Bridge, and then I had to make a like a gold miner. I think it's pretty cool. I like it. It's got the Last Second Sports down below. So yeah, I enjoy it, man. I appreciate it. But yeah, I was surprised. Now there was some really, really good games by a couple guys. You talked about Tutu Atwell, which, they drafted him a few years back now, and he really hasn't broken out, but now you're starting to see it a little bit. And now, Puka Nacua, who, it's interesting because a lot of people really like Puka Nacua, but when it came down, they were calling him, interestingly enough, a poor man's JSN, and it was Puka that showed out in that game, and JSN not doing much for Seattle. So that to me was really cool to see for him. And I may have taken the 2 players that you're going to talk about, and if so, I apologize. You can talk about whoever. Maybe you can elaborate on why those guys had good games and maybe why you think they're going to continue to do so. But who are the players, or just a player, that maybe we don't know about and need to know about? And I will say this, I'm personally very curious about that defense. You said it's a young defense. You said that they were humming this last week, which I did not expect from them. Maybe give me a player from over there, just because I don't know who the hell's even over there.
Yeah, no, it's great. And so offensively, I mean, you mentioned, so I don't need to dive into more, but Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, I think Tutu Atwell finally did what Rams fans have been hoping, so they took him in the second round. And then Puka Nacua has just had a phenomenal camp and just obviously getting more reps with Cooper Kupp being out pretty much all at training camp. And so we took advantage of that. So the one I'll give you on offense that may not be a mystery, but Kyron Williams, running back, drafted out of Notre Dame last season. I love when they draft. So the Rams have, to back up a little bit, since the Todd Gurley fiasco, they basically taken on the mantra of, we're just going to basically draft a running back every single year and not extend that. Once they reach their 4th year, then they go on their way and we just keep the cycle going. So they've drafted running. They drafted Zach Evans this year, Kyron Williams last year, Cam Akers before that. And so, it's coming. And so I loved when they drafted Kyron Williams out of Notre Dame. And unfortunately, he got a non-contact injury in OTAs last year and then never really kind of got into it. I think honestly, because of how injured they were last year, they just didn't think it was worth putting him in harm's way. So they really kind of held him out. So lot of hype around him. He had 2 touchdowns this week, so I think he's a guy that he's much better in pass pro than Cam Akers, which is why he's going to get more playing time as the season progresses. So I was telling people all offseason in fantasy, I'm like, you don't want to draft Cam Akers. That's not the guy to draft. I wouldn't draft anyway. Ryan's running backs just because they're gonna split each other, but Cam Akers is not the guy. So Kyron Williams, love him. On defense, it's
hold on. I want to go
yeah.
back to that because I am a fantasy guy and I did draft Kyron Williams and did not draft Cam Akers. So it wasn't even a handcuff situation. It was like somebody that I specifically targeted and he showed out right away. Absolutely. So I'll take, a little pat on the back for that one.
Well done, sir. Well done, sir. Yeah, and then defensively, what's interesting about this defense is that there's a lot of unknowns, but they at least have one. Obviously, Aaron Donald's a superstar. I don't know if I'd call these next 2 guys superstars yet, but very, very talented young players at each level. So they got Aaron Donald at the D line. They got Ernest Jones as the linebacker, and he was honestly part of the reason why they decided to split ways with Bobby Wagner this offseason. Part of it was obviously shedding that cap space for the future, but part of it was because the Rams run a 3-4 base, but a lot of their packages only feature one linebacker because they go real heavy in the secondary. And so they felt that by having Wagner, they were losing reps to Ernest Jones, who's only in his 3rd year. So that was one of the things that they felt really good about, moving on from Wagner and just sticking with Jones. And he obviously led the team in tackles against Seattle. And then on the back end, you got Jordan Fuller, who, balled out his rookie year, played great his sophomore, and then last year was banged up just like the rest of the team. So a lot of people kind of forgot about him. So they've gotten themselves in a way where they have one good player at each level, and then they've now added all these young guys that they just kind of hope can learn the system quickly and shine. And so I'll give you one name, and it's, I think Kobe Durant is really good on the back end, a guy that showed some talent last year, but was just really raw coming in. And so he's a guy I think that they're really excited about. And then Kobe Turner, so 2 different Kobe's on the defensive line, showed how talented he is, came in real kind of raw again. It's kind of the Rams. I always joke about this on our show. The Rams draft strategy is kind of a DIY, like basically raw guys that have injury history.
Yeah.
You got to come in and do it yourself and prove yourself, but they did on Sunday.
No, that's interesting because the Rams have the mantra, the F them picks. But really, the reason that the Rams remain competitive after making all the 1st round and 2nd round draft pick trades and almost throwing some away for guys like Cooks and what have you, is they draft really well in the late rounds. They have traditionally. And so it's no surprise that some of these guys are starting to flourish. And that's what you've seen with the 49ers in the past. You've got like Hufanga. Obviously, everybody knows who the hell he is now. And Dre Greenlaw, who's smashing it on defense. Diamador Lenore, very good corner. So, yeah, there you go. So that's the 49ers have done well with that also. They don't say F them picks, or at least they haven't traditionally, but they've kind of effed off them picks early on. So the same difference. It doesn't matter either way. But those are some of the late round picks for the 49ers that have definitely stepped up over the years. And you're seeing it come to fruition with the Rams as well. And it's funny because, again, I look at it as an outsider and say, all right, max 6 games. And maybe that's still the case. Week 1, I'm not going to overreact to a lot of things. We don't know how the season's going to play out. But usually, if McVay, a very good coach, has a Super Bowl, sounds like he wants to start a family, easily could have left this whole thing and gone into network television and made a crap ton of money, much easier job. There's a reason he came back. He obviously felt pretty confident in the young talent that's there. And that's not just a this year thing. That's probably a few year thing where he's going to try to stick this out and just see how it turns out. But there was something that he knew that maybe us outsiders to the Rams didn't know. And it sounds like you were obviously on top of it, knowing your team. But that's something that maybe we underestimated as 49er fans potentially.
Yeah, I mean, he came out and it was very real, like all the speculation last year of his maybe walking away. And, he is pregnant, having a baby boy. So hats off to the McVays. But he came out now recently and has said, he if he was going to come back, he wanted to make sure he could make a difference for his players. So whether that's coach speak or not, but he was basically saying like, I want to make sure I can lead these guys the right way. Obviously win football games and enjoy myself and not kill myself working 150 hours a week. But I want to make sure I can still relate to these players, make a difference, be a leader, make them better football players, but also better men. And so the fact that he said he felt resoundingly like he could, that gave him that new rejuvenation to where he's like, okay, I'm all in. Like, this isn't a 1 year thing, as you alluded to, where we'll see how this year goes. He's like, I'm in. Like, I think he's got 3 or 4 years left on his contract. Maybe he's done after that, but for at least the foreseeable future, he's back in LA and coaching this team. And obviously I think rightfully so. And we get to enjoy this McVay Shanahan rivalry for so much longer. So I have a quick question for you, if I may, unless you want to jump in real quick.
Of course. No, go ahead.
So obviously, I'm sure you talked about it extensively after the game, doing it live and whatnot. So you don't have to go too much into details for most of your audience. But I wasn't surprised by the dominance the Niners showed over the Steelers. I, for one, think the Niners are probably from top to bottom the most talented roster in all of football. Obviously, very well coached. You lose a guy like D'Amico Ryans, but you replace him with a very big, capable, very smart defensive coordinator that they brought in. And I thought they drafted fairly well as well. I also was on the side that I thought Pittsburgh was getting, I think, overhyped this offseason. I love Mike Tomlin, never had a losing season. Like, the dude is just unbelievable, but I mean, we don't know Kenny Pickett's going to make that leap. Matt Canada is still the offensive coordinator. There's no innovation there. So I wasn't shocked at all by the game because the Niners are so talented. Pittsburgh, I think, was overvalued. Just were you surprised by anything, or was it business as usual for you at that 30-7 win?
No, I was very surprised. And I'll tell you why, because the 49ers clearly had the better team. That was not the question. And I actually did not pick the Steelers going into this season to make the playoffs. So I've got a team that I think potentially could win the Super Bowl in the 49ers, and then I've got a team that I'm not picking the playoffs. On paper, it could be a blowout, but the way that I saw it is Tomlin in week 1 always has those guys ready. Last year, it was Burrow. The year before, it was Allen. They were able to get wins there. Burrow looked awful last year, 3 interceptions in that first game. They were at home. Early game, by the way. 49ers traveling cross country. Steelers once again played a lot of their starters, all 3 preseason games. So I figured if any team week 1 was going to be ready to go, it would be the Pittsburgh Steelers. Not that they're more talented, but just because they would be ready. The 49ers traditionally do start off a little bit slower. They've had the 2-4 start, the 3-5 start. They've turned it around, and they've made deep runs. I did pick the 49ers to win. There was no way I was going to pick against them week 1, but I thought it would be close. I said it would be 23-20, and I was absolutely wrong. And I was at the game. You knew right away. As soon as they got that stop in that first touchdown, I looked to my friend and I'm like, this thing's over. It's already over. There's no way that they're going to be able to keep up with the 49ers from this point on. You felt it in the stadium, and it became clear very quickly. I was shocked that they chose to receive when they won the coin toss, did the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that was a major mistake on their part, and the 49ers went and handled business. So, yeah, I was actually a little surprised at how big of a margin that game was.
Yeah, I mean, it's I guess I wasn't, but it's you cover the team a lot more extensively, so
yeah, well, I don't mind being wrong, especially when it's in favor of them smashing another team. I loved every second of being wrong. And the other thing is this: there was so many unanswered questions going into that game, and not that all of the unanswered questions means that things are going to turn out bad, but you just don't know. The 49ers got rid of Robbie Gould this offseason. They drafted Jake Moody in round 3, which to me, you just don't take kickers in round 3, but they did. And
I wasn't going to go there, but
yeah, right. He struggled his ass off during the preseason. I mean, every kick was an adventure, I think is a nice way to put it. And then he was injured and unable to play the final preseason game. So he's coming off of injury. He showed no confidence in the first 2 preseason games, missing extra points, missing kicks. Even when he made them, it was like tight. So I'm thinking to myself, man, if the game's on the line, can we trust him going into week 1? And I thought it would be a close game. Well, you know what? Jake Moody was really freaking good. Everything was right down the pipe. there was no reason to question him, I guess, in hindsight, because he showed out. Another question: could the 49ers be a dominant run defense again? They were giving up tons of yards in the preseason. I get it's preseason. You can't take everything off that, but they were absolutely getting gashed. And then you couple that with a new defensive coordinator, and you're thinking, all right, is it the defensive coordinator? Is it Javon Hargrave that's not a good run defender? What exactly is it? Well, they can stop the run, it turns out, no problem. So there was just some questions that needed to be answered going into that game. Some were, most were. There was one that was not, which was the right side of the offensive line. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, a little bit later. But for the most part, they answered all those questions. And that's why that game ended up being a blowout. So
There you go.
Brother Bob says, let's get to it. Fuck it. Niners 41, Lambs 10, keeping my receipts. All right. Well, you picked a blowout last week and I doubted you. So I'm not going to doubt you this week. I think my score will be a little bit closer. All right. Let's talk about maybe a reason to be confident in this game. And I don't know who you're picking yet, but the Rams are coming off of a win against a division opponent. What is a reason that Rams fans should be confident going into week 2 for this upcoming game?
It's a great question. I would think with how poised Matthew Stafford looked and how confident, or I shouldn't say how much better and improved the offensive line looked. So I don't know how much you've been following Rams offseason, but the offensive line obviously was abysmal last year. They had like 13 different starting lineups, the most in the NFL because of all the injuries. And so even going into this year, there was a lot of unknown who the starting five were going to be. And they were shuffling guys. They obviously drafted Steve Avila as their first pick out of TCU and didn't play together in the preseason because McVay obviously never plays starters in the preseason, like a lot of coaches. I was one pound on the table, like these guys need to at least play one game. Like, come on, or like 2 drives. Give me that. Like they've never played together. There's 5 new guys there. So never did it. And so that was like my biggest concern was like, I know Stafford's back and healthy. I know they've got a good running stable there. I know with Cup back, but even without him, they do have talent as receivers. Tyler Higbee's kind of the stalwart as a tight end, but are they going to have time to do anything with that offensive line? And it's a different beast going against the Niners because your guys' defensive front and front 7 is probably the best in football, if not the best, 1A, 1B, whatever you want to call them. The Seahawks are not there, but Matthew Stafford was untouched basically all game. The running game, I mean, they ran the ball 37 times. I mean, the running game was going fairly well and fairly smooth. So I'm not 100% confident just because of how good the Niners front line is. But if there's to answer your question, if there is an exuberance of confidence, it would come from the offensive line showing that they could do what we didn't think they could do going into the year. And that was play consistency, be gap consistent across all 5. There wasn't a true weak link in that. Alaric Jackson played great at left tackle. Steve Avila looks like an absolute man child out there as a guard, and Coleman Shelton, I think, showed out as his true starting center, taking over for Brian Allen last year. So I think the offensive line is where I would put the confidence, which you couldn't say that even in their Super Bowl year, that probably wasn't the most confident position. So that's a good sign, at least through 1 week.
Yeah, the more that I listen to you, I don't think that it's that far-fetched that the Rams could be this year's Seattle Seahawks. I mean, let's look at it realistically here for a second. Seattle last year, I mean, going into this season, I think most people, especially not Seattle fans, were looking at them the way that maybe we're looking at Rams fans, which is, the Rams football team, which is 5 to 6 wins. That's the ceiling. And they came out. They had a big win week 1, which everybody was surprised about. They beat Russell Wilson and the Denver Broncos, and then they got mollywopped week 2 against the 49ers, which may also happen to the Rams. We'll see. It's interesting that the week 2 opponent's the same, by the way. But then slowly but surely, the young talent started to figure out how to play in the NFL. And they had a quarterback who was playing really good football, who's a veteran in this league. I know he hadn't showed it necessarily before, but he was, a veteran, good coach, and they were able to right that ship and sneak into the playoffs. Maybe the Rams actually can be that team. It sounds like there's a ton of talent. A lot of players that we as outsiders don't know about, but they're absolutely producing already. You've got the coach, you've got the quarterback. Maybe, just maybe, if Cooper Kupp comes back healthy, they might be this year's Seattle Seahawks. I'm the more I'm listening to you talk, I think that that's a possibility. I really do.
Well, and that was kind of like my ceiling going into the year was I think
Mhm.
just you look at the talent in the NFC, and it's not that far fetched that because of the organization they have, because of the coach they have, and because of the quarterback they have, that there's an opportunity there to steal some games away and surprise people. So yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say they're a Super Bowl contender after 1 week. I'm not even going to sit here and say they're better than the Niners after 1 week, but I think they, although it was more than what I expected at 30-31, but I think they showed kind of what I had anticipated, that they're going to be a competitive team because they have their stalwarts in place and they're able to do that. So one thing before I go back, before I don't know if you have your next question or I'll do, but I saw a
No,
comment
go.
from a guy named BMax. I'm not trying to call anyone out or anything, but I saw him say it was more about the Seahawks defense playing bad and the Rams offense playing good. And I
Mm,
would push back against that a little bit. Now, I think the Seahawks defense did play a pretty porous game by their standards overall. But if you watch the tape, you watch the game, I mean, the Rams offense was kind of clicking on a lot of different levels. And part of that was Stafford hitting, I don't know if you saw that kind of flag route to Puka Nakua
yeah.
in between a tight window. I mean, he was hitting throws we've seen him make his whole career. Just no one, everyone talks about, Mahomes and all these other guys, where Stafford's kind of the starter of those throws. And he was doing stuff like that. Some of the route concepts that McVay was doing was getting these guys open in space. And like I said, Kyron Williams was doing great in pass pro, but also looking very comfortable catching the ball in the backfield. And they were committed to the run, running 37 times. So I'm not sitting here saying that the Legion of Boom was back and the Rams exposed them, but I do think the Rams offense does deserve a little credit that they were able to do a lot of things that exposed the Seahawks defense. It wasn't just them playing bad.
Oh, and I think at least on paper, the Seahawks upgraded their defense in a massive way this offseason. So and especially, I mean, especially that secondary is improved, and it was already pretty decent in Seattle going against some. I mean, I'm not going to say nobodies, but guys that were relatively unknown for the Rams. And Matthew Stafford, people forget very quickly in this league. If you don't play for a while, Matthew Stafford is a legitimate, bona fide top 10 quarterback in this league if he's healthy. He's not one of those guys like a Dak or a Kirk Cousins or a Kyler Murray. Who else? Derek Carr that may dip their toe in the top 10 from year to year, depending on what's going on. No, Matthew Stafford, if healthy, is a lock top 10 guy in
Mm-hmm.
this league. And he seems to be healthy, which means, yeah, I expect him to be a top 10 guy again if he can make it through this season. And I think that we need to give him some credit and understand how good he really, truly is. You know, a lot of people take things away from him, but when you've given arguably the two best single seasons to two different wide receivers in your career, and now with a young stable around him, he's still getting it done. Man, that dude deserves some credit, no doubt about it. As far as the 49ers go, reasons for confidence. I mean, how can you not be confident? This
Yeah.
team is absolutely stacked, man. And this is a true win now team. They've got to figure out how to get it done. They've freed up a ton of cap space. I imagine that they're going to be big spenders when it comes to the trade deadline. But there are all pros up and down this lineup. Not to mention regular season, playoffs aside, still heartbreak a couple years ago, but regular season, they have absolutely dominated the Rams. I mean, this is a game that they should win. On paper, they should win it. Past tells you they should win it. 49ers should be very confident, and their fans should be very confident. It's going to be hard to pick against the 49ers to lose any game until they actually lose. Once they lose, all right. It's almost like I got to see it. I'm not saying they're going undefeated. That would be crazy. But it's going to be hard to pick against them in any week until you do actually see them lose a game because I think they are that talented right now.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I agree 100%. It's just was on a show last night, kind of one of our other shows we were doing like on the Rams angle, and yeah, we're just talking like, man, what deficiency do they have? Like, what weakness do they really have at this point? And we'll see if anything gets exposed. But there's nothing on paper and through 1 week where you can say that's what we're going to attack and have success doing that. It's it's going to be tough. And they have had the Rams number outside of the most important game they played. Though they did not didn't win that one.
Yeah, thanks for reminding us, Ryan. We appreciate it, you jerk. No, I was kidding. I don't know if you remember that year, Ryan, but I was wrong. I was wrong all 3 games that year. At the end of the show, we always pick the winner of the game. And if you remember that season, I actually picked the Rams to win both of those regular season games. And I was wrong both times. And so I said, you know what? 49ers won both the games in the regular season. There's no way I can pick against them now. And I didn't. And I was wrong. So maybe me picking the 49ers is not a good thing when it comes to this thing, because the last time that we did this, I was 0 for 3 that season. So there we go. What are you going to do?
It's all good. 2 years ago. You're good.
2 years ago. Yeah, that's true. That's right. Matthew Sanders says both teams' success will be determined by the O-line in this game. I think we can get to Stafford. Excited for a good win in the Niners home opener. Yeah, I said it. Yeah. What? I mean, we're very confident as 49er fans when it comes to playing the Rams in, we call it Levi South. What do Rams fans think of that whole thing? I know they hear it. Like, do they like get frustrated with it? Is there a pride thing? Like, what are their thoughts about 49ers fans and how well they travel in these games?
Oh, I mean, they hate it. Obviously, it's hate, but it's what's hard. And I'm just gonna be very real here. I live in LA. I lived in Long Beach for 10 years. I live in Pasadena now. What's hard is I think the Niners in general travel great. I mean, we've seen them in Vegas too, right? Taking over the Raiders Stadium out there. It's all red. So we know I'm not saying they don't travel great, but LA is home to a lot of Niner fans. So it's not just them coming down the 5 to this game. A lot of Niner fans live here. And what's funny is most of those Niner fans are diehard Dodger fans and diehard Laker fans, but then they're Niner fans because there was no team here for 21 years. One of my best friends is that very same thing. Diehard Laker fan, diehard Dodger fan, diehard Niner fan. So I think that's what's more frustrating for Rams fans. It's like you're going to hate on the Rams and say beat LA, but then you're repping your Dodger blue when they play the Giants.
Yeah.
And so it's, everyone can have their fun, call it Levi South, but in reality, it's those guys most Niner fans live within 15-mile radius of SoFi Stadium. And it's not like it's a commute. They live probably closer than a lot of Rams fans. And the Rams in LA, it's going to take 10 years for these young bucks to now be Rams fans because they were gone for 21 years. And so when it was in that drought of 21 years, you had Joe Montana, you had Steve Young. So it was natural that a city with a population like LA that had no teams was going to migrate to those quarterbacks. And so they did. And so I don't have a problem with it. I think it's fun back and forth. But I think it's not as truthful as the national perception is because LA is home to a lot of Niner fans who are also Dodger and Laker fans.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very, very interesting. No doubt about that. All right, let's get to this next one here. So we talked about reasons to be confident. Give me a reason why Rams fans should be concerned going into this game.
So one is Kyle Shanahan schematically. I mean, he's obviously one of the best in the games, but especially against the Rams, like he is a magician and an absolute does master classes on the Rams. I think every time they play schematically, whether it's whatever the Rams try to do defensively, it's like, okay, we're going to take away Kittle. Well, then it's a Deebo Samuel game. If it's like, okay, we're going to take Deebo Samuel, it's a Kittle game. We're going to try to take both away. Well, now you have Christian McCaffrey or Brandon Ayuk, who just balled out last week with 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
So not only is the talent there, but schematically, Kyle has always had an answer for whatever the Rams try to throw at them defensively. So all the issues with, facing this ferocious front 4 that the Niners have with, a strong secondary with obviously arguably the best linebacking core with Greenlaw and Fred Warner. I still think the Rams offense will have some success. I'm not saying they're going to blow it out of the water, but I think they'll be able to at least put up 20 points. But defensively, my concern is like, there's just so many weapons. What do you stop? And you guys lose Mike McGlinchey, and your offensive line still looks like it's better than most. So I just think that's kind of what my concern would be, is like, how do you slow down this scheme? Because no matter who you key in on, Kyle Shanahan always seems to find a way to get one guy to be his moment. So that would be my biggest concern, is, schematically, how do you slow these guys down?
Yeah, it's very, very tough. I don't think there's many teams that player for player can match up. It's almost like you just hope that they have an off day. And I think it can be daunting looking at it. But I will say this, there is a weakness on this team as it stands right now. And it may not be throughout the course of the season, but right now the right side of this offensive line is very questionable. Very questionable. You had 3 sacks given up to TJ Watt last week, albeit one of the best pass rushers in the league. But Colton McKivitz was a turnstile over there, and he gave up 5 pressures as well. Then you have Spencer Burford, who's going into year 2. A lot of us, including myself, hoped that he would take that leap going into this year. So far, he has not. He had 2 penalties that last game and had 4 pressures himself. Neither of them were dominant in the run game. Usually, like with Mike McGlinchey, really good example. Not the best in pass protection, but you could count on him in the run game. Well, right now, you can't count on Colton McKivitz to do anything because he was not good there either. So when I look at somebody like Spencer Burford, and I look at the 49ers, who traditionally have done a very, very good job against Aaron Donald, he almost does nothing in these games. I don't know if that's going to be the case this weekend. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be the reason that the 49ers lose necessarily, but Aaron Donald, I think if he gets matched up with Spencer Burford and gets some one-on-one looks, I think that is an area where he could absolutely wreck the game. And I am worried about potentially that happening. So the right side of this offensive line, ultimately, long-term, if the 49ers are going to be real Super Bowl contenders, and I think they can be, they absolutely have to figure that thing out. They cannot roll with these 2 guys on the right side if they're going to continue to play this way. And if it comes down to it, how do you replace them? I don't know. During the season, that is tough to do. So hopefully they can step it up. But right now, the right side of the line, it was in question coming into the season. I talked earlier about how the 49ers answered a ton of questions in game 1. Well, that was the one that they did not answer, and there's still a lot of questions there.
Yeah, and so that seems like, and I was actually going to ask you, like, is there a weakness they can expose? So it seems like that would be, you got to almost cheat all to one side, bring the pressure that way, and then see how, Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan obviously counters that, which they always do a pretty damn good job of it. But I think that'll be an interesting storyline to see, is if they're able to, with guys like Kobe Turner, Byron Young, both rookies, but because they don't have Jesse. I mean, the Rams, this is the first year probably since they've been in LA where they don't have, obviously outside of Aaron Donald, but on the edge, they don't have at least one star pass rusher. Because it's like they drafted Dante Fowler, in the first round, and he was never really a star, but at least had that pedigree. They traded for Floyd. They traded for Von Miller. They always had at least one guy that kind of showed out. Well, right now they got Michael Hoyt and a bunch of young guys that are kind of just rotating in, Byron Young being one of those who played very well last week. So will those young guys be able to expose that right side, or is it going to be the Donald show and up to him to have any effect is what's going to be. So throwing it to you. What's not to be confident, but what would you be concerned at all about facing this Rams team?
Like I said, Aaron Donald's always a monster, but I would say Matthew Stafford. I mean, if he gets hot, he gets hot, and he is hard to stop. Now, I obviously, if I'm just being realistic, I think this 49ers defense really outmatches 95% of the offenses in the league. However, good quarterbacks can sometimes just be the difference. They really can make up major gaps in talent from time to time. And I think Matthew Stafford still can be that guy. And I would be concerned about that potentially happening. I don't think it's a huge concern, but it definitely has to be something worth monitoring, because I really have a lot of respect for Matthew Stafford, a ton. If you haven't understood that or figured that out by now, by the way that I've talked about him to this point, let me tell you again, he's a bona fide top 10 quarterback. I have a ton of respect for Matthew Stafford.
Hey, the Niners tried to get him, right? They were in the sweepstakes when the Rams traded. The Niners were the other team, and the Rams just happened to beat him out.
Yeah, so. I mean, absolutely. And likely it would be the 49ers with the Super Bowl ring at this point. How the tables have turned on that whole thing. It could have been the Niners, and, you know, who knows what the talent would have looked like then or what would have happened after that year. But yeah, Matthew Stafford, I believe wholeheartedly would have delivered a ring to this team by now. And, you know, the whole Trey Lance thing that really had a hold on this fan base the last couple of years would have been non-existent. It would have been Matthew Stafford. Hell, we wouldn't know anything about Brock Purdy, not as a 49er anyway, because Matthew Stafford would probably still be here. So, you know, everything happens for a reason. I think the 49ers can get it done with Brock Purdy and this team this year, and hopefully that's the case. But if not, then that will be one that will probably forever linger, is like the quarterback that got away. So we'll see. Rob Schneider stepping in. Do you remember Rob Schneider, like in those crappy 2000s comedy movies?
He's the best.
What was one of them? There was one where he was the what one?
Well, 51st Dates is one when he's the crazy.
There was one where he was like a pet, like babysitter or something like that. I forget what it was called. Anyways, there was two of them. They were absolutely awful.
He was also the male gigolo.
Yeah.
He was those ones, or international.
I think that was him. Yeah.
Nice. He became getting way off topic here, but he became the business has now gone under, but there's a solar company out here in LA called Varango Solar, and he became like the celebrity spokesperson for Varango Solar. So I don't know if his career just gone that bad where he had to do like solar commercials, but he was the face of Varango Solar, and they're no longer even around. Deuce Bigelow.
Good for him, man. Good for him. Get your money, Rob Schneider. The sacks look like coverage instead of rush sacks. Okay. Is that like on the... Oh, he's saying, all right. Dallas's D-line looks better than ours. Got it, speed. Okay. So he's saying on the 49ers side, they look like coverage. I'll say this. The 49ers had 5 sacks. And I don't think that the Steelers have a great offensive line by any means. But Bosa hasn't even gotten going yet. Like, he just got to the team that Wednesday. Like, Wednesday night, he flew from Florida to San Francisco or Santa Clara, signed his contract late Wednesday into Thursday. Then 2 days later, had to fly back to the East Coast. He wasn't his same dominant self. I would put this defensive line, especially now that I've seen Drake Jackson do his thing, up against most in the league. So I think week 5 is going to be fun. And we'll see who the dominant defense is. But I think there's an argument to be made that the 49ers are still that. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, it's a fun debate.
It is a fun debate. And we'll find out. We'll find out week 5, right? All right. Yeah. So we've talked about reasons for confidence. We've talked about reasons to be concerned. Before we get into our score predictions, what is one thing that the Rams must do if they want to win on Sunday?
Man, there's definitely a lot more than one thing for them to have a shot in this game. But I think they got to get a pass rush on Brock Purdy. We were just talking about D-line. We're talking about, how great the Niners D-line in, which it is. You talked about, their one weakness being that right side. So maybe I'm copping out here with my answer, but Brock Purdy, I think, has proven that he's a solid quarterback at minimum in this league, and with potential upside there. A lot more than me. I think I haven't totally. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm buying into that he's a superstar yet because of all the weapons he has and just But the dude's proven he can win games and he can absolutely play in this league and run this system absolutely. And I think he's probably a little more mobile than given credit for. He can definitely evade pressure and get out of it, but similar to Matthew Stafford, he's a lot younger, but similar to that, if you put pressure on him and stuff, and that's where things can potentially go awry. So if the Rams want any shot to slow this offense down, they're going to have to get pressure on him, even if it doesn't result in sacks, just, whether it's knockdowns or whether it's just pressures or whatever stat you want to use. At least if they're getting in his face somewhat and putting pressure, it can allow for those plays to not develop as much. And also just, Aaron Donald be like, hey, I'm still Aaron Donald. Like, I'm still here in your face. Watch out. I'm coming for you every single play. Get used to seeing me and my big paws around you. So that's probably, if you ask me, the one thing, it's gotta be, they got to have some sort of pass rush and put pressure on Brock Purdy.
Did you get a kick out of Geno Smith and what was coming out of his mouth this last week when Aaron Donald was anywhere near him? I mean, he was freaking out. He's like, oh, dropping F-bombs and literally in the middle of plays, just cussing every time Donald got near him. I don't know if you saw that, but that actually made me laugh.
Oh yeah. I mean, not to go back and talk about that, but I love Geno's story. I'm happy for him. Happy he got paid. I still don't understand how all of a sudden he became like a top 3 NFC quarterback after the season he had. Like, he had a good start. It was fun, but his last 4 games were abysmal. Like, he was old Geno. Like, I don't know how he came into this year and all of a sudden he's this like bona fide star in the NFC West. I don't get that, but anyway, that's old news.
Well, I did the Seahawks behind enemy lines, and that was like the big topic of debate for actually 2 shows that we did. And I was like, I actually believe that Geno can play well again, and I'm not going to write him off after 1 game, but he's in that category to me of guys that are not top 10, and maybe they can, masquerade around for a year to be a top 10 guy, but they're not truly top 10 players that when you give big money to, you're really kind of hampering your team. Like, those are guys that you shouldn't pay top 10 quarterback money because you're going to put your team or your franchise behind the 8 ball. And I think he fell into that. And so that was like the big debate between he and I. We'll see how he bounces back, but I wouldn't have paid him that kind of money if I'm Seattle. That's just me, but I don't know what their other options were. You know what I mean? So what are you going to do? But yeah, anyways, that's for another day. That being said, what do the 49ers need to do? What is their one must do if they're going to win this game? I would have to say make the Rams one-dimensional. I was actually pleasantly surprised that the Rams really did what they could to establish the run game. I mean, even if it wasn't working at times, they stuck to it. And that has not been the case with the Rams the last few years. They have almost completely abandoned the run game at times and forced themselves to be one-dimensional. I mean, they've really played in the hands of a lot of defenses. Yeah, you would know that. Yeah, you have. You really have. And, they were able to get a Super Bowl out of it, which is fantastic. But last year we saw how that didn't go too well. This year, it seems like they've put emphasis on going back to establishing the run. And even if it's not working, being able to work play action off of that versus just putting Matthew Stafford in gun and going 5 wide. And like, that's what you have to do, especially for a quarterback who has a history of injury. If you want to keep him upright, if you want to help out your offensive line, you have to establish the run and you have to protect your quarterback. And that's what the 49ers have to stop this weekend. They have to make sure that they do not allow them to establish the run. They have to jump on them early, much like they did Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, I think, only had 13 rushing attempts or somewhere close to that. And that's what Pittsburgh wanted to do as well. They wanted to run the ball. They wanted to establish the run, but they couldn't. It was too fast that the 49ers opened the floodgates. I think the 49ers need to do that again. If they get deep into a third quarter and the Rams are feeling comfortable in the run game and this game's a 1-score game and you've got Matthew Stafford back there, I don't feel comfortable that it's a for sure win. I don't necessarily think we get to that point, but that's what the 49ers have to avoid, in my opinion, if they want to make sure that they win this game.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and just to counter that, not even counter, but agree with that. Like, if the Rams have no pass rush and if they run the ball less than 25 times, they're not winning this game. I mean, they have to commit to the run, whether it's working or not. And I say all the time, Jesse, like, I'm not ever going to sit here and pretend like I know more than these NFL coaches. I'll never disrespect them like that. They deserve all the respect in the world. But there are times when it's like, guys, we're 8 minutes into the game. Why are we just abandoning the run? Like, what are we doing here? Like, the whole defense then knows that. And the Rams and McVay have done that many times. You just mentioned Pittsburgh, and I know Pittsburgh got in the 8 ball quick, but the last thing you want to do as a team with as potent as an offense as Niner have is just keep giving the ball back quickly without your defense getting any blows. And so even if the run game isn't working, you're at least like you're giving your defense some time to catch their breath, and maybe you go 3 and out, or maybe you get a one first down, but then you punt and don't score. But at least you're taking some time to let your defense rest, and that then builds you up for the next drive to do something. And so they got to have 25 plus rushes to even have a shot in this game.
Yeah, Trent Williams actually came out after the game, believe it or not, and was like, the Steelers went 3 and out so many times in a row that I was winded, and I was hoping that they could get a first down because I didn't want to go back on the field. Like that's how bad it got in that game, and they couldn't establish the run, and the 49ers jumped on them, and it got bad very, very quickly for them. So I think that's what the 49ers would prefer to do. Definitely that's what I would prefer to see happen. Like I said, Pickett's one thing. Can he take a leap this year? We'll see. But Matthew Stafford, I have a ton of confidence in. And I don't want to see the 49ers be in a close game with the ball in his hands and a chance to win. I wouldn't be confident in that. That's just me personally. So,
yeah,
I don't think it can get there. And that brings us to the score prediction, which also I will say I don't think it does get there. I'm not going to go as outlandish as Brother Bob here, who gave us a score of 41-20, or excuse me, 41-10. But I think we might have a comfortable win, I'll say, by the 49ers. And I'm going to say the 49ers win 31-13. And they do exactly what I said they need to do to win this game. They jump out early, they hold the Rams off, and they win this game a little bit going away. And we'll see what it does to the rest of the Rams season. I mean, really, I think it might be a good omen for them. We just talked about Seattle last year. Nobody expected them to do the things that they did. They won week 1 against a team that they were not expected to win. Rams just did that. Then week 2, they got beat up a little bit by the 49ers, and we saw what happened to them. Maybe this is good for the Rams that they were able to lose this one, and maybe they'll bounce back and do what the Seahawks were able to do. But I'm going to go 31-13 49ers. What is your score prediction on this one, Ryan?
Yeah, I think it'll be more competitive than most people think. I think the Rams proved that last week against the Niners. I think Sean McVay will call a better game than he has historically against the Niners in a regular season game. And I think we'll see some young players kind of show out and show some star performances. But all that being said, I don't think at this juncture in the season, especially without Cooper Kupp, that there's just enough firepower to keep up with this Niners team. And I think, I didn't love the Brett Maher signing. That was one thing. The Rams this offseason did a lot of things this offseason to obviously tear down what they had built. But the one thing they probably should have done was reinforce the kicking room, and they end up signing Brett Maher like a week before the season starts. And, he missed 2 last week. Granted, they were both 55 plus yarders. So I'm not discrediting for that, but I think he probably misses 1 or 2 field goals again in this game, which I don't think will necessarily affect them winning or losing, but it could affect momentum swings. And when it's all said and done, I think they lose. So Niners win 31-21. But I think it's a hard fought battle, 10-point loss. I know it's an 8-point spread right now, so they don't quite cover, but I think they'll show a lot, at least in pride and in terms of what they can build upon. But the Niners at this point, one weekend, they're just too good right now to really compete with.
I do want to ask you before we leave, actually, about Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp on the pup. Just looking at it from the outside, it really seems like he may not even play this year. And I say that because it sounds like what he's got going on there with his hamstring is something that the Rams medical staff couldn't figure out. And so they sent him out of the building to try to get it under control. What is the update on Cooper Kupp? And am I overblowing this thing? Or is that a real possibility? You think that he may not play this season, or at least most of this season with this thing?
No, I mean, it's a real concern. I would say it's at this point, it's not DEFCON 5, considering they waited that long to put him on IR. I mean, they waited until hours before week 1 or hours before the kickoff started to put him on. So I think there was still thought that, he could be fine in a few weeks, but then they figured, you know what, let's just rest him. The last thing I've heard in terms of what the actual injury is something to do with a contusion in the hamstring, similar to what Stafford had last year with the neck contusion. And so definitely something that is concerning, but it at this point doesn't seem like it's anything season ending, but enough where he could have maybe been back in 2 or 3 weeks, but it was like, let's just put him on IR for 4 weeks, let him fully heal and get back. But I mean, it's definitely something that is uneasy in terms considering, you know, he was out 2 weeks in training camp, came back, practice, everyone was good, and all of a sudden had this quote unquote setback, and now is seeing specialists in a different state and then goes on IR right away. So it's not ideal. I feel like he'll be back after that 4-week IR. But it's definitely something to watch for because, you know, you never know with these things, especially when it is a soft tissue injury. If there's a lingering something like that, those go on forever, as we all know.
Yeah, that's a tough break for Cooper Kupp. I hope that he gets healthy, man. I think he's really fun to watch. I think the league missed him and Stafford last year, and hopefully we can watch him play this year. Abraham Muniz says, would you say that the 49ers wearing their home jerseys could be a mistake? It could motivate the Rams. I do like the Niners knowing it's Levi South. I think that's an interesting point. You know, I think I don't know what went into the decision. I really haven't had a chance to look into it. I just heard that was going to be the case. I don't know. I mean, who knows? Is this? I mean, I'd have to go back and look at every game that they've played against the Rams. I mean, what do the Rams traditionally wear at home? They wear whites, or do they wear blues, or what? They wear whites. So what are they wearing this week?
I don't know if they're gonna wear bone or they're blues. I haven't even looked. I got a guy that does jersey watch. I don't usually do that, but that's a good question.
I got you.
I mean, I'll just say this: if the Rams need that for motivation, then why show up? So
yeah,
you know,
if
they need that for their motivation, then they got bigger issues. So
maybe the extra motivation. I don't know, but yeah, you're probably right about that. That's probably
I mean,
probably
the Rams. They've been here now, since 2016. So we're going on 6 years, 7 years. I mean, they can look up when they run at the tunnel and see the stands. I mean, they know what's going on. So I mean, they have enough motivation, I think, to fire him.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I'm gonna shout out your channel here for my guys watching over here on Last Second Sports. You know, Ryan just gave us an hour of his time. And interestingly enough, he and his channel don't only cover the Rams, they cover all LA football, which means UCLA, the Chargers, the Rams, USC. They cover everything that is football when it comes to the LA region. So you may not be a Rams fan, but you might be a USC fan or a UCLA fan. So make sure that you give them some love. Go check them out. And I always say this as well, but maybe you just want to troll them after the game. I'm sure that they would take the hits over there for you to do so. Go show Ryan some love. And hell, he just picked his own team to lose to the 49ers. So you can't be that mad at him. You really can't even hold him accountable if the 49ers win. So let's be clear about that. But again, if you want to know about opposing teams, if you want to know about teams across the league, always check out content creators because they have a passion for it and they know their team better than any national media could. So go give Ryan and the whole LA Football Network some love. Go check them out on YouTube.
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. So, you know, we're just we're trying to really build out YouTube. I think you've crushed it. Like, obviously you're killing it right now. Like, we've been more on the editorial side and obviously our website, LAFB Network. And then with YouTube, we kind of had our main channel. And then now we've created 4 new team channels, which is what we have on right now, which is still very new and we're building out. So we got specific for Rams, specific for Chargers, specific for Trojans, specific for Bruins, plus the main one. So, yeah, we'll start figuring out this world of YouTube, but appreciate the shout out.
Let's hold on. Let's not downplay what you guys are doing over there. Maybe the YouTube side is something you guys are working on, and we can chat. We'll stay on and chat, and I'll give you everything that I know and try to help you guys out. But you guys are crushing it. You guys, during the Super Bowl, when the Rams were in the Super Bowl, you were on Radio frickin' Row. You talked to Pat McAfee. You were talking to all those guys. I mean, all the big names are there, and you were able to rub elbows with all of them. I think that is a testament to show you what LAFB has been able to accomplish, man. I think it's absolutely incredible. You guys are killing it. YouTube is the next venture, and I think you guys will do well there. And heck, I noticed that you guys broke up the channels, and not only that, you've got a couple of them over 1,000 subs, which means they're monetized. That's awesome.
We're getting there. We're getting there. So I appreciate the love, but hey, I look forward to jumping on with you, man, every time. I wish we could do it more. If you didn't always have to do Niners, maybe if you want to do some other stuff and get into the college realm, and if you want to talk Florida and Tebow, we'll see. We'll have you on whenever you want. So
hey, well,
USC
and Oregon, we can definitely have that conversation. You can hit me up for that. I'm an Oregon.
Are you an
fan,
Oregon guy?
So I'm an Oregon guy. Yes, sir.
Okay.
So maybe that's a conversation we can have. I'd be all for it.
So Oregon plays Colorado, and the very next week, Colorado plays USC. So I'll be out. I'll be out in Colorado for that game, and I'm hoping Oregon gives Colorado their loss, so they can kind of have some humble pie and get back down to their roots, I think.
Well, I hope so too, man. That's going to be a hell of a game. I can't wait for that. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Ryan, for coming on as always. And until next time, peace.